This text calls it general form. It's possible you might see this identified as standard form in some other texts, but we're going to stick to it as being called the general form. Okay? And the general form looks like this. Okay? It's written in its completely expanded form. So it's going to be written from highest degree to lowest, so ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are the coefficients of those second degree, first degree, and 0 degree terms. Okay? And so as far as this general form, you can identify the behavior of the graph by just looking at this form itself. If a is a positive number, then your graph's going to open up. So again, a is your leading coefficient. Okay, so if a is positive, your graph is going to open up on both the long run behavior and behaviors. Okay, and if a is a negative value, so if it's less than 0, then your graph's going to open down. Okay, now, one of the key things that you need to be able to do in each of the three forms so that this can be expressed in is you need to be able to find the vertex. So if you want to find the vertex and your equation for the quadratic is given in this general form, the way that you can find it is you can take negative b over 2a. Okay, if you take your coefficient of the first degree term, divide by, or multiply by negative, and then divide by twice the a value, that's going to give you the x coordinate of your vertex. And then to find the corresponding y coordinate, what you would do is take whatever that number is, whatever the value you get for negative b over 2a, and you're going to evaluate the original function with that number. So basically, whatever your x coordinate is for the vertex, you evaluate your function for that x value, and that will give you your total vertex. And we'll go through and show each of these here in just a second. Because of this, the symmetry is always a vertical line passing through the x coordinate of the vertex, so it's going to be the equation x equals whatever negative b over 2a is. And remember, you can do these calculations on your the field of that you enter your homework answers. Okay, so if you remember this, you should be good. You can do it on your calculator as well, but you can enter that. And then to find the zeros for standard or this general form can be found by using quadratic formula. And so it's not the only way. Obviously, we have the solve feature of our TI-89s, but if you find the quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, that's going to be your x coordinate of the zeros, and then your y coordinate will always be 0. Right? And so those would be all your zeros. So if the number inside this radical was 0, you'll have 1 0. If this number is negative, you're not going to have any zeros. And if this number is positive, you're going to have 2 different zeros for that. Okay. So let me go through an example of this, and we'll go through each of these parts that it's asking. All right. So if we took this function right here, and we wanted to identify the different pieces of information that it's asking us here. Okay, so the first thing that we might find is the vertex. To locate the vertex of this, what we're going to do is we're going to take negative b over 2a. What is our b value? What's the coefficient of our first degree term? It's just a 1. Okay, all over 2 times, and what's our a value? What's the leading coefficient? 2. And so you get negative 1/4 as your x coordinate of the vertex. So when you identify your vertex, you have a negative 1/4. And then you need to evaluate this function for that x. I'm going to go ahead and do that on the calculator here. Okay, so if we wanted to evaluate this with the calculator, what we could do is take 2x squared plus x minus 1. There's my function. And I'm going to use the with key. And when I put x equals negative 1 over 4, it'll give me my answer in fraction form. And so here I get a negative 9 over 8. But remember, most of the entries will also be in the calculated form. So once you find your x-coordinate of the vertex, what you could do is you could enter 2 times -1/4 squared plus -1/4 minus 1. And if you entered this here on your answer field, it should calculate the correct answer for you and give you the -9/8 or the decimal equivalent to that as you enter it. Okay? All right. If you had to find the x-intercepts, which are also the zeros, what you can do to find x-intercepts is you can take your original function, set it equal to 0, and solve. Okay? And so if you were to take solve f of x equals 0 for x, you will find all your x-intercepts. So if I wanted to, in this particular equation, what I could do is I could jump to the front of this equation, use my solve feature. Okay, I have my equation written out here. And I can set that equal to 0 and solve for x. Okay, and when I do that, I will get my solutions here of 1/2 and a -1. So 1/2, 0, and -1, 0 would be my 2 x-intercepts. Okay? Or they also are called the zeros of this graph. And now, if you wanted to solve it more like what I have written right here, what you could do is you could enter the original function into your y-editor. So if I had written my 2x squared plus x minus 1 into my y-editor, then on the home screen when I do my solve feature, I would use my function notation, y1 of x equals 0, solve for x, and this will calculate, and it'll give us the same numbers, the 1/2 and the -1, but that's the other way that you might use it if you're entering your function in the y-editor instead of just typing it in as you go. Okay, the final thing that you might be asked to solve for here is your y-intercept. And the y-intercept from standard, or this general form, is just your constant. Okay, so if I put my y-intercept in general is going to be the point 0, c, whatever your last term, your constant term is. And so here 0, -1 would be my y-intercept. Okay, so if I needed, the only other thing that I might have here would be symmetry. The line of symmetry is x equals -1/4, and the end behavior for this graph, because my leading coefficient is positive, my end behavior is it goes up to the left and up to the right.